Right, so new scheduled banned and suspended announcement to go over. Now, face value, there's not a lot going on, right? Oldhim, we all knew he had the points that he was going to reach Living Legend status, so it's not a big deal, but there are some larger talking points I think we should go over in relation to Oldhim actually finally obtaining Living Legend. And then in terms of banned, we have Bullseye Braces, Bloodsheath Skeletor has moved from suspended to banned, and then Pulse of Eisenloft is now unbanned. And altogether, these are some interesting things to also discuss because Legendary Studios shows a great amount of transparency in their rationale and thought process when it came to these decisions. And then we have actually a larger sort of comment on Bloodsheath Skeletor. Before we get into that, again, I do just want to go over Oldhim. So, him finally being Living Legend. Wow, what do we have? We have Bravo, star of the show, already Living Legend, and Oldhim Living Legend in both Classic Constructed and Blitz, right? So that means that, well, in terms of competitive play, Elemental Guardian is no longer a thing, right? No Elemental Guardian cards are technically legal in competitive play. This is actually a big deal, right? Because what it means is the top-end players, the mid-end players, the beginners who are gravitating towards Elemental Guardian, well, all of them don't care about it anymore, right? The simple fact is the top-end players who aren't in it to collect or anything like that, well, they're going to take their Elemental Guardian decks and they're going to exchange those cards or convert them into cards for a playable hero, right? That's the rational thing to do. So overall, this is a huge impact on the secondary market when it comes to Elemental Guardian. Because again, no Elemental Guardian cards are viable in competitive play. And we've been going over for the past month or so how much competitive play actually dictates the secondary market. So if you don't think this is a big deal, well, it is. It is a huge deal because in terms of speculating, right, Elemental Guardian cards are just going to fall and fall and fall as they sit in this limbo until we get a new face card for the Elemental Guardian. And again, by and large, players who were playing Elemental Guardian, players who were thinking about playing Elemental Guardian, well, they're all now going to gravitate towards something else, right, whatever defines the meta. And anyone with those Elemental Guardian cards, again, unless they're saving them for a collection, they're simply going to cash them in, and convert them, and use them to reduce the cost of, getting into another hero. Yes, I'm sure some people will hold on to their Elemental Guardian cards under the speculation of the next Elemental Guardian that we do get, but by and large, these cards are going to change hands a lot, and they're going to go towards the negative end, right? People are just going to try and offload them. So if you want to sort of speculate, right, I'm not an investor, I'm not a collector, I don't hold a ginormous amount of cards, I buy the cards that I like and am interested in, I don't do it for any financial prosperity, but I would say that, this is probably the time to just stock up on Elemental Guardian cards for their eventual return to play. The other rationale to sort of think about, consider, is in terms of Blitz. If Briar ever got close, then there'd be no Earth, and in Classic Constructed, Briar is very close to being Living Legend, and therefore taking Earth cards out of the pool for Classic Constructed. So both of those are something to keep in mind now. I think it was the Tall Timmy who did a video on whether or not the meta would define the sets that Legendary Studios makes and what they put into their sets. And to be honest, I was in line with that thought until we got all the Dusk Till Dawn spoilers. I mean, given the lore, given the artwork, I was fully expecting a Oldhim reprint in some fashion, right? It wouldn't be a direct reprint, but a new Oldhim in that set just snuck in, as one of the Marvel cards maybe, to therefore allow Elemental Guardian to continue to be played, right? It doesn't have to be to the same extent as Oldhim, right? You can completely change it. You twist it so it's still not the slower meta, right, when Oldhim was top dog. But by and large, that was what I was expecting. That's not what we've seen. And the current thought is that the Savage Lands is going to be the next set. And I mean, he could show up, but I doubt that's going to feature heavily in terms of Elemental. But it does seem like Elemental is the next sort of big set hierarchy that we do need to revisit, again, in order to keep these cards viable when it comes to competitive play, because again, competitive play heavily dictates the secondary market. The other thing that I do just want to highlight from this, and we'll probably talk about it more once we get to the Dusk Till Dawn spoilers, is it generally looks to me that Legendary Studios are just are continuing to emphasize that this is a passion project, right? They are making the cards they want to make. They are making the influences for the meta that they want to make. They're not solely creating cards that are needed, right? But fun and interesting mechanics that they want to introduce to the game. So for instance, in terms of Dusk Till Dawn, right? It's not really a supplemental set. It is just a way for them to introduce the new Visettes and the new Prism. So by and large, the majority of the set sort of rotates around those two heroes and their new mechanics. So I wouldn't really expect them just to tack on heroes to any set just for the sake of, again, allowing these cards to re-enter play. But it is a big deal that, again, all Elemental Guardian cards are now effectively, worthless when it comes to competitive play. On to the other things. So we have Bullseye Braces, Pulse of Eisenloft, and the Blood Sheath Skelter. So the Bullseye Braces, they do an excellent job sort of going over their rationale. And essentially, with Oldhim gone from the meta, they believe that the Bullseye Braces offer too high of a ceiling for both Lexi and Azalea, and they're therefore not necessary to the meta, right? They just would be icing on the cake. They don't think it's going to necessarily diminish Lexi's ability to be, say, tier 1, or, Azalea's rise since Outsiders, but at the same time, they don't think it's necessary to be a part of the current meta. So for now, they are removing it, they're banning it. It is quite a decent glove slot. It has that extra tagline to put a card in your arsenal, which is obviously a major thing when it comes to Lexi and Azalea, and of course, shooting arrows. Plus then, the Arcane Barrier is nice, considering we're about to enter, a arcane heavy state of play again with the second rise of Runeblade, it looks like. Speaking of which, the Blood Sheath Skelter. So, this one is a lot shorter, but a lot more interesting, because they have one big tagline here. It is for this reason that we don't believe we can safely return Skelter back to the card pool, even once Vizari ascends to Living Legend. Right, so both Awakening and Bloodsheath Skelter are the main crux of this paragraph, if you will, where they believe that they are too efficient, essentially. What they offer in terms of play makes them a bit... Sorry, I'll just have to apologize. Dog's trying to find something under the door, apparently. Essentially, they both retract from the normal state of play, right? So in Flesh and Blood, the general thing to do is have multiple lines of play. You don't go searching for X card, you play X card if you find the card. And having the strategic options open to you is a big thing about the game. The issue with Awakening, right? So Awakening represents a mode of uncapped resource generation that they are not comfortable with. Awakening generates 10 resources and finds Pulverize. So that's quite a big deal because, again, it comes this question of, rather than, finding these cards and playing these cards, it's all about, well, find my Awakening to find my Pulverize, and then use Pulverize to, well, deal a lot of damage. And overall, I think this also sort of speaks to we won't get tutors in the normal sense, right? Because again, Legends Story Studios and Flesh and Blood, by and large, they want this state of play where it is about strategy, where it is about having these different lines of choices for you to make, rather than, again, trying to search and look for these set few cards that you want to use altogether to essentially win you the match, right? They want you to be flexible. They want you to use strategy. And both Awakening and Bloodsheath Skelter are sort of too efficient for that mentality. But don't dismay, right? So Bloodsheath Skelter has essentially been cut in two with Dusk Till Dawn. So rather than just having Bloodsheath Skelter, instant destroy it, next action card or non-attack action card you play this turn, costs less per the rune chant tokens you control, we now have the two new cards in Dusk Till Dawn, being Bequest the Vast Beyond. There we go. I was about to say Runic Reckoning, which is also interesting to me too, that they haven't used the new Runegate tag for it. Either way. So what is it? It's basically the instant effect of Bloodsheath Skelter. Granted, it's not instant, and it only affects attack action cards you play, so not non-attack action cards. But it's still, very strong. It's a zero-cost card that essentially allows you to heavily discount another attack action card you want to play. And then in terms of the chest slot, right, we now have Dietic Carapace. So it has Arcane Barrier 2, has Temper, and it has 2 defense. So overall, a really, really efficient and defensive slot, right? So if you don't need the resource generation in terms of Runeblade, because you can use Bequest the Vast Beyond, you can use Rune Gates in a lot of Vizet cards, well, you can now easily run this as a defensive option to really shut down wizards or other Runeblades, as opposed to running a Spring Tunic or the Bloodsheath Skelter, which again has been banned. Now, this one isn't too much of a big deal because it is a Majestic. If it was a Legendary, I'd sort of have issues with this choice, right? So to ban or to completely remove a Legendary from play would be a big deal. And then to also have this tagline where they don't really think it will ever come back would be huge in terms of a Legendary, right? Because essentially Bloodsheath Skelter is now a dud card, right? It has no play. Its value is in its collectability, being a Majestic. You know, outside of the first edition, I wouldn't say it's hugely collectible. Now, if it was a Legendary, I would more so push for a errata to its effects, right? It's clear that what they would like is either the removal of the instant or the removal of the non-attack action card to sort of halve its playability. Either way, what really speaks out in this article is, again, the amount of transparency that Legend Story Studios has and showcases. Right? They didn't have to add on this tagline that they don't expect it to ever really be unbanned, but they have. Because, again, they're being transparent. They're completely rationalizing all their decisions, and if you really want to read it, you know, it's wonderful. Right? To see a company put in this much effort in explaining their choices, it's just a wonderful thing to see. So anyway, that is it, right? Oh, actually, we didn't really talk about Pulse of Eisenloft. I don't think there was too much of a big deal. Essentially, just Oldham's gone, so Pulse is back. I believe this is the Ice one, right? Oh, no, it has Earth too. To me, it seems like a decent defense card, right? Whether or not you need that substantial amount of block, I don't know. Again, I'm not big on play yet. I like saying yet, because I do plan on learning properly. But anyway, that will do. So yeah, hope you enjoyed.